Welcome to your review of water and filtration in sports and performance nutrition.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the world of, supplements and specific diets when it comes to athletic performance.
Yeah.
But sometimes the simplest things are the most important.
Yeah.
And today's deep dive focuses on one of those fundamental elements, water.
That's right. We often overlook just how vital water is.
Hmm.
In fact, restricting water intake can be fatal in mere days.
Wow.
It's that essential for our survival.
Yeah.
And for someone like you who is interested in optimizing athletic performance, even slight dehydration can really hinder your progress.
It's like trying to run a car without enough oil.
Right.
The engine might work for a bit,
Yeah.
but it won't be long before things start to break down.
Exactly.
Let's break down exactly why water is so crucial for athletes.
Well, water makes up about 55 to 60% of our body weight
Okay.
and is involved in almost every bodily function. It's like the infrastructure of a city.
Okay.
Without well-maintained roads and a reliable power grid, nothing can run smoothly.
So we're not just talking about quenching thirst here.
Right.
What are some of the specific roles that water plays in keeping us going, especially during physical activity?
Water acts as a structural component of our cells.
Okay.
Think of it like the scaffolding that holds everything together.
Okay.
It's also the medium in which all those important chemical reactions occur.
Hmm.
Kind of like the chef's kitchen where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And importantly, it enables our bodies to cool down through sweating,
Right.
preventing us from overheating during intense workouts.
That's so crucial, especially when training in hot environments.
Yeah.
It's amazing how our body regulates its temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and water is at the heart of that process.
Exactly. Beyond regulating temperature,
Yeah.
water plays a critical role in maintaining that delicate pH balance within our bodies.
Okay.
It's like a buffering system that prevents things from becoming too acidic or alkaline,
Right.
which would disrupt normal function.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it comprises a significant portion of our blood volume,
Yeah.
allowing for the efficient transport of oxygen and nutrients to working muscles.
It sounds like we'd be in pretty bad shape without enough water.
You got it.
So how do we ensure we're getting enough of this essential nutrient?
Well, about 80% of our water intake comes from the fluids we drink.
Okay.
This can be plain water, but also includes things like milk, juice, or sports drinks.
Right. Staying hydrated isn't just about carrying a water bottle everywhere.
Right.
It's about making smart beverage choices throughout the day.
Precisely. Surprisingly, almost 20% of our water intake comes from the foods we eat.
Oh, wow.
Fruits and vegetables are especially good sources.
Okay.
Think about how juicy a watermelon is,
Yeah.
or how much water is in a crisp salad.
That's a good reminder to prioritize those hydrating foods in our diets.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about adding an extra serving of veggies to my next meal.
And the final small percentage of water our bodies need comes from our metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
The process of breaking down the food we eat.
So we're constantly taking in water through various sources, but we're also constantly losing it, right?
Yes.
Especially when we're pushing ourselves during exercise.
Absolutely. We lose water primarily through urination,
Okay.
especially when resting. It's our body's natural way of getting rid of waste products.
Mm-hmm.
We also lose water through our bowel movements
Okay.
and even through breathing and our skin.
Oh, wow.
This is called insensible water loss
Mm-hmm.
because we don't even notice it happening.
Just like a leaky faucet we can't turn off
Well,
completely. But when we exercise, sweating becomes the main avenue of water loss, right?
Yes. And this is why it's especially important for athletes to pay attention to their hydration before, during, and after training.
It's all about striking a balance then.
Right.
We have this visual in our source material that illustrates typical daily fluid intake and output.
Yeah.
It really highlights how much water we're taking in and getting rid of on a daily basis.
Right. That's a good way to visualize it. Ideally, we want our water intake to match our water loss,
Mm,
which means we're in a state of balance.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case, is it?
right. Sometimes we're ahead, sometimes we're behind.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through the different states of water balance?
Sure. When our water intake is less than our water loss, we call that hypohydration.
Okay.
When intake matches loss, we're balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And when intake exceeds loss, it's called hyperhydration.
So what we typically think of as dehydration is actually the process of losing body water, right?
That's right.
And it sounds like not being properly hydrated, that state of hypohydration can really hinder performance.
Absolutely. But hyperhydration, while less common, can also be a problem,
Okay.
especially in endurance events.
Yeah.
When athletes sweat profusely and only replace fluids with water,
Mm-hmm.
this can lead to a dangerous imbalance of electrolytes in the blood.
So finding that sweet spot is key.
Yeah.
Not too little water, not too much.
Exactly.
But how does dehydration actually impact our performance?
Um,
What happens when we start to lose more water than we're taking in?
well, it's like a slow leak in a tire.
Okay.
At first, you might not even notice it, but as the tire loses more and more air, it becomes harder to steer and control.
Hmm.
And eventually, you'll be stranded on the side of the road.
I see the analogy.
Yeah.
So are you saying that as we lose more water, our performance gradually declines?
Exactly. Initially, you might just feel thirsty and a little sluggish,
Mm-hmm.
but as dehydration worsens, your blood volume decreases,
Okay.
making it harder for your heart to pump blood and oxygen to your muscles.
Yeah.
This can lead to fatigue, difficulty concentrating, headaches, dizziness, and even muscle cramps.
All of which can spell disaster for an athlete trying to perform at their best.
Absolutely. In fact, dehydration can be a major contributing factor to heat-related illnesses,
Mm-hmm.
which are a serious concern for athletes training in hot environments.
Right. We have this chart in our source material that outlines the most common heat-related disorders.
Yeah.
Heat cramps,
Mhm.
heat exhaustion,
Yeah.
and the most severe heat stroke.
It's important for athletes to be aware of these conditions and their symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Heat cramps involve painful muscle spasms.
Okay.
Heat exhaustion manifests with profuse sweating,
Yeah.
cold, clammy skin, dizziness, and a rapid pulse.
Oh, wow.
And heat stroke, the most dangerous, is characterized by a lack of sweating,
Okay.
hot, dry skin, a rapid pulse confusion, and even disorientation.
It sounds like heat stroke is a real medical emergency.
Yes, if you suspect heat stroke, it's essential to seek immediate medical attention.
Mm.
Knowing how to prevent and manage dehydration is crucial for any athlete.
So how can we stay ahead of the curve?
Right.
How do we effectively monitor our hydration levels to make sure we're in that optimal zone for performance?
There are a few simple things you can do.
Okay.
First, pay attention to your body weight fluctuations before and after training.
Mm.
If you're consistently weighing in lighter after a workout, you're likely not hydrating enough.
So consistent daily weigh-ins can be helpful.
Right.
Are there any other signs we can look for?
Yes, your urine color is a great indicator of your hydration status.
Okay.
Think of it like a driving light system.
Okay.
Pale yellow means you're well hydrated, like a green light, you're good to go.
I like that.
Darker yellow approaching amber means proceed with caution.
Okay.
You need to drink more fluids, and if
Mhm.
your urine is very dark or haven't urinated in a while,
Yeah.
that's like a red light, a clear sign that you're dehydrated and need to rehydrate immediately.
I love that analogy. It's such a simple way to remember.
Yeah,
So we've talked about the importance of hydration,
right.
the dangers of dehydration,
Mm-hmm.
and how to monitor our fluid levels.
Yeah,
But what are some general recommendations for daily water intake?
right.
Is that a magic number?
Well, you've probably heard the 8 glasses of water a day rule, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been told that at some point.
It's a well-intentioned guideline, but it's not necessarily accurate for everyone.
Right.
Individual hydration needs vary greatly based on factors like activity level, body size, and the climate you live in.
Yeah.
The dietary reference intake values offer a more personalized approach,
Okay.
providing recommended amounts of total water from both food and beverages for different age groups and genders.
Mm.
For example, men generally require more water than women.
So it's really about tailoring those recommendations to our own individual needs and circumstances.
Exactly.
But for athletes, especially those engaged in intense training,
Right.
wouldn't they need to consume more water than the average person?
Absolutely. And there's a simple formula you can use to estimate your individual needs based on your daily energy expenditure.
Okay.
It's about 1 milliliter of water per 1 cal expended,
Mm-hmm.
plus an additional 2 to 3 cups for every pound of weight lost through sweat during exercise.
Okay, let's break that down.
Okay.
If I were to burn, say, 2,000 calories during a tough workout, I should aim to drink at least 2 liters of water,
Mm-hmm.
plus extra to account for any sweat loss.
You got it. And remember, this is just an estimate.
Oh, sure.
So factors like the temperature and humidity,
Right.
whether you're acclimated to the environment,
Mhm.
your altitude, and even your fitness level
Yeah.
can all influence how much water you need.
So listening to your body and paying attention to those individual cues is key.
Absolutely.
Now, we can talk a lot about water,
Right.
but are there other fluids we can consume to stay hydrated?
Of course, milk, juices, sports drinks, even tea
Mm-hmm.
can all contribute to your daily fluid intake.
Yeah.
And remember, don't forget about the water content of foods,
Right.
especially fruits and vegetables.
Right, that chart showing the huge difference in water content between lettuce and a bowl of cereal really opened my eyes to how much hydration comes from our diet.
Right.
It's not just about what we drink.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance that works for you,
Yeah.
factoring in both food and beverages.
Mm-hmm.
And a good rule of thumb is to practice hydrating during training, not just during competition.
Okay.
It's much easier to establish those good habits when they're part of your regular routine.
That's a great point. So before we move on to specific hydration strategies during exercise,
Yeah.
are there any other general tips for staying hydrated throughout the day?
Definitely first, make sure to calculate your individual fluid needs using that formula we discussed.
Mhm.
Aim for pale yellow urine as a visual guide.
Okay.
And get your fluids from various sources throughout the day, remembering that food counts too.
It's great to know we have options. What about caffeinated drinks?
Yeah.
Are they off limits?
For fine in moderation, but just be mindful that excessive caffeine can act as a diuretic,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it can increase water loss.
Okay.
The same goes for protein. Don't go overboard.
Right.
And always check with your doctor or pharmacist about any medications you're taking, as some can affect hydration levels.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is. Our bodies are truly complex systems.
They are.
Now let's shift our focus to hydration in the context of exercise.
Sounds good to me. Hydration strategies before, during, and after exercise are key to optimal performance.
So let's start with pre-exercise hydration.
Okay.
What's the best way to prepare our bodies for a challenging workout?
Pre-exercise hydration is like laying the foundation for a house.
Okay.
You want to make sure it's solid and stable before you start building.
So we can't just chug a gallon of water right before hitting the gym and expect to be good to go.
Exactly. That approach can actually backfire.
Oh, wow.
Ideally, you want to meet your predetermined fluid needs 24 hours prior to exercise.
Okay.
Think of it as gradually filling up a reservoir, not just turning on a fire hose at the last minute.
Okay, slow and steady wins the race when it comes to pre-exercise hydration.
Right.
So how much should we be drinking in the hours leading up to a workout?
About 4 hours before your workout, aim to slowly drink around 400 to 600 milliliters,
Okay.
which is roughly 2 to 3 cups.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 10 to 20 minutes before you start, top off with another 200 to 300 milliliters, about a cup.
That seems manageable. It's a good reminder to be sipping on water consistently throughout the day, not just when we're thirsty. What about checking our urine color?
Yeah.
Is that something we should be doing before exercise as well?
Yes. 2 hours before exercise, check your urine color.
Okay,
If it's dark or you haven't produced any urine, you'll need to hydrate more.
right.
Remember, pale yellow is the goal, like a green light telling you you're good to go.
Got it. Okay, so we're prepped and hydrated. What are our options for pre-exercise beverages?
You've got plenty of choices.
Mhm.
Water is always a solid option,
Mm-hmm.
but milk and juices can also work well.
Okay.
Even sports drinks can be beneficial,
Yeah.
particularly if your workout will be intense or prolonged.
Okay.
Caffeinated drinks are okay in moderation,
Mm-hmm.
but be mindful that they can be dehydrating.
Right.
And definitely avoid carbonated drinks,
Yeah.
as those can cause bloating and discomfort during your workout.
That makes sense. Now let's fast forward to the workout itself. What are the key considerations for hydration during exercise? How do we make sure we're staying on top of our fluid needs while we're pushing ourselves?
During exercise, the goal is to maintain both hydration and electrolyte balance.
Okay.
Think of it like a two-pronged approach.
Mm-hmm.
You need enough fluids to replace what you're losing through sweat,
Right.
but you also need to replenish those crucial electrolytes that are essential for muscle function and preventing cramps.
So electrolyte balance is important for shaving off those muscle cramps that can really derail a workout.
Absolutely.
What's the best way to maintain that balance while we're exercising?
During exercise, aim to consume 200 to 300 milliliters, or about 1 to 1.5 cups of fluid every 10 to 20 minutes.
So we're talking about consistent sipping throughout the workout.
Right. Don't wait until you're thirsty to drink,
Okay.
because thirst isn't a reliable indicator of your true hydration need.
Mm-hmm.
It's like waiting until your gas light comes on before filling up your tank.
Yeah,
You don't want to push it that far.
that's a great analogy. It really drives the point home. So what are the best choices for hydration during exercise? Is water always the best option?
Water's a great choice,
Mm-hmm.
especially for shorter workouts.
Okay.
But if your workout lasts over 45 minutes or you're training in hot and humid conditions,
Yeah.
consider a sports beverage with a 6 to 8% carbohydrate mix.
Okay.
This will help replenish electrolytes and provide you with some extra energy.
And I remember you mentioned that fruit juices aren't recommended during exercise because of their high sugar content.
Exactly. Stick to water or sports drinks for optimal hydration during your workout.
Got it. Now, I know that a lot of athletes, myself included, can get caught up in the intensity of their workouts and forget to take those water breaks.
Yeah.
What are some practical tips for making sure we stay hydrated during those intense training sessions?
That's a great question. It's all about making hydration a conscious part of your routine.
Hmm.
First, ensure that fluids are readily available throughout your workout,
Yeah.
whether it's a water bottle, a hydration pack, or access to a water fountain.
Right,
Make sure you have a convenient way to replenish fluids.
right. It's hard to stay hydrated if you don't have access to fluids. What else can we do?
Choice is also important.
Okay.
Let athletes choose beverages based on their personal taste preferences to encourage consumption.
Mm.
Some people might prefer plain water. Others might like the taste of a sports drink.
Yeah.
The key is to find what works best for you and make sure it's easily accessible.
I like that providing options can definitely boost motivation to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
Take regular breaks.
Okay.
Don't try to push through a long workout without giving yourself time to refuel and rehydrate.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage athletes to start drinking early in the workout.
Boy.
Don't wait until they're feeling thirsty.
Right.
And recommend cool fluids around 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit
Mm-hmm.
as they're more easily absorbed by the body.
Okay, so we've crushed our workout. We're feeling good. What's the game plan for post-exercise recovery? How do we replenish those fluids and electrolytes we lost during training?
Post-exercise hydration is all about replenishing fluids and electrolytes lost through sweat.
Mhm.
Think of it as restoring your body to its optimal state after a period of depletion.
So should we be chugging a sports drink as soon as we're done?
Not necessarily, while you want to begin rehydrating as soon as possible.
Mm.
Avoid consuming large volumes of fluids too quickly.
So slow and steady wins the race again. What are the best choices for post-workout hydration? What should we be reaching for after that intense workout?
Drinks and foods containing carbohydrates and sodium are ideal.
Okay.
Carbs will help replenish your glycogen stores, and sodium aids in fluid retention.
So something like a banana with a sports drink or a recovery smoothie would be perfect.
Exactly. They provide the protein needed for muscle repair,
Yeah.
the carbohydrates for energy replenishment,
Mm.
and the fluids to rehydrate effectively.
Right.
And remember, planning is key.
Yeah.
Have your post-workout hydration and snacks readily available so you can refuel immediately.
Makes sense. So what about the amount of fluid we should drink after exercise? Is there a rule of thumb for how much we need to replenish?
Yes, aim to consume 16 to 24 ounces or 2 to 3 cups of fluid for every pound of weight lost during exercise.
So if I lost 2 pounds during my workout, I should drink about 4 to 6 cups of fluid to recover properly.
That's right. By following these pre, during, and post-exercise hydration strategies,
Yeah.
you can ensure that you're giving your body the fluids it needs to perform at its best and recover effectively.
Hmm.
Now that we've covered these general principles,
Right.
let's talk about how these hydration needs might differ for different types of athletes and training modalities.
Okay, so we're getting specific. I like it. Where should we start?
Let's start with endurance athletes.
Okay.
Think marathon runners, cyclists, triathletes.
Yeah.
Those folks putting in serious mileage, often in hot conditions,
Right.
and losing significant fluids through sweat.
So hydration is even more critical for them.
Exactly. Endurance athletes need to be extra diligent about their pre-exercise hydration plan,
Mm-hmm.
making sure they're adequately hydrated in the days leading up to a big event.
Yeah.
They can't just start hydrating the day before a marathon and expect to perform their best.
Right. It's about building that hydration foundation over time. But what about during those long workouts and races? How do they stay on top of their fluid needs when they're pushing their bodies for hours on end?
That's where sweat trials can be incredibly helpful.
Uh,
It's all about understanding how much fluid they're actually losing.
Right. So it's not just about following general guidelines. It's about personalizing their approach. How do those sweat trials work?
It's fairly simple, really.
Okay.
They weigh themselves before and after a training session,
Mm-hmm.
taking into account any fluids consumed during that time.
Okay.
This allows them to estimate their individual sweat rate,
Okay.
which can then inform their hydration plan.
So if they're a heavy sweater, they'll need to drink more frequently during their event.
Exactly. And in some cases, they might even need to consider electrolyte-rich beverages to
Yeah.
replenish those minerals lost through sweat.
Got it. That makes sense. Now, what about strength athletes? Do their hydration needs differ from endurance athletes? I know they're not sweating for hours on end, but they're still pushing their bodies pretty hard.
That's right. While sweat rates might not be as high as in endurance sports,
Mm-hmm.
proper hydration is still crucial for strength training. Think about it, when you're lifting heavy weights, your muscles are working hard,
Yeah.
generating heat,
Hmm.
and requiring optimal fluid balance to function properly.
So dehydration could lead to fatigue cramping and decreased performance even in a weightlifting session.
Absolutely, strength athletes should focus on consistent hydration throughout the day,
Okay.
especially in the hours leading up to their training session.
And what about during that workout? Do they need to be sitting on water between sets? Or is it okay to just drink before and after?
Having a water bottle handy and taking sips between sets is a good practice.
Okay.
This can help maintain hydration levels throughout the training session.
And what about post-workout recovery for strength athletes? What should they be focusing on?
Just like endurance athletes, strength athletes need to prioritize rehydration after their training session.
Mm-hmm.
A combination of fluids and foods containing carbohydrates and sodium is ideal for replenishing glycogen stores, aiding fluid retention, and promoting muscle recovery.
So a protein shake with some fruit would be a good option?
Exactly. It provides the protein needed for muscle repair,
Mm-hmm.
the carbohydrates for energy replenishment,
Yeah.
and the fluids to rehydrate effectively.
Okay, so we've covered endurance athletes and strength athletes. What about team sports? How does hydration play a role in sports like soccer, basketball, and football?
Team sports present their own unique challenges when it comes to hydration.
So what makes team sports different in terms of hydration considerations?
Well, first, there's the variability in playing time and intensity. Some players might be on the field for the entire game, while others might only play for short bursts.
Right, and that makes it harder to standardize a hydration plan, doesn't it?
Exactly. And then there's the added factor of environmental conditions.
Mhm.
Games played outdoors, especially in hot and humid weather,
Right.
will increase sweat rates and fluid needs.
So it's like a moving target trying to manage hydration in team sports.
It is.
What's the best approach for making sure everyone is adequately hydrated?
The key is to have a team-wide hydration strategy in place.
Okay.
This involves educating players on the importance of hydration,
Mm.
providing regular opportunities for fluid breaks,
Yeah.
and ensuring that fluids are readily available on the sidelines.
So it's about creating a culture of hydration within the team.
Exactly. And during those really intense games, especially those played in extreme heat,
Right.
coaches and trainers might need to implement more proactive hydration measures,
Okay.
like scheduled water breaks or even monitoring players' sweat rates and urine color to assess their hydration status.
Wow, it's like having a whole hydration team.
It might seem like overkill, but optimal performance depends on it.
Yeah.
When players are properly hydrated, they're able to focus, react quickly, and maintain their energy levels throughout the game.
Right. It's not just about physical performance, it's about mental sharpness as well.
Exactly.
Dehydration can really impact cognitive function.
It can.
Now, what about athletes who compete in multiple events or train in different disciplines? How do they navigate their hydration needs when their training demands are constantly changing?
That's a great question for athletes who cross-train or compete in multiple events.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about individualizing their approach.
Okay,
There's no one-size-fits-all plan.
so no magic formula they can just plug into.
Right. These athletes need to be adaptable and adjust their hydration strategies based on the specific demands of each activity.
So if they're doing a long endurance run one day, they'll need a different hydration plan than if they're lifting weights the next day.
Exactly. They need to consider factors like the duration and intensity of the activity,
Mm,
the environmental conditions,
right.
and their personal sweat rate.
It sounds like a bit of a puzzle putting all these pieces together.
It can be, but the good news is that once athletes understand the fundamental principles of hydration
Yeah.
and how to monitor their own bodies,
Mm-hmm.
they can develop a hydration plan that works for them and supports their performance goals, no matter what sport or activity they're engaged in.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm feeling much more informed about hydration and its impact on performance.
Good.
Before we wrap up this segment, are there any final takeaways for our listeners today? What are some key points they should remember as they head out there to train and compete?
I'd say first and foremost, remember that hydration is an ongoing process. It's
Mhm.
not just about chugging water before or after a workout.
Right.
Consistent hydration throughout the day is key.
So make carrying a water bottle a habit.
Exactly. Second, don't underestimate the power of monitoring your body.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to your thirst, urine color, and body weight fluctuations.
Mm-hmm.
These are valuable indicators of your hydration status.
And don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you.
Absolutely. Hydration needs are individual.
Mm-hmm.
What works for one athlete might not work for another.
Yeah.
Try different beverages, timing strategies, and monitoring methods to find what helping you feel and perform your best.
Great advice. And I think we have time for one more quick point before we wrap up this segment.
Let's do it.
Okay, this might seem obvious, but it's worth reiterating. Don't wait until you're thirsty to drink.
That's such an important point. By the time you feel thirsty,
Yeah.
you're already dehydrated.
And that can have a significant impact on your performance, as we've discussed.
Exactly. Be proactive about your hydration. Develop a plan and stick to it. Your body will thank you.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of hydration. I feel like I've learned so much, and I bet our listeners are feeling the same way. Now, let's move on to some common hydration myths that often trip people up.
Let's tackle some of those hydration myths that often trip people up. It's time to separate fact from fiction.
I'm ready to bust the myths. I feel like I've fallen for a few of these myself over the years. Where do we start?
Let's start with a classic. You need to drink 8 glasses of water a day.
Oh, I've definitely heard that one countless times. It's practically ingrained in our mind.
It's a well-intentioned guideline, but it's not a one-size-fits-all rule.
Right.
As we've discussed, individual hydration needs vary based on a multiple of factors. Your activity level, body size, the climate you live in,
Yeah.
and even your diet.
So listening to our bodies and using those monitoring techniques we talked about, like checking urine color,
Right.
is a more reliable approach than blindly following that 8 glasses rule.
Precisely. It's about tuning into your body's signals and adjusting your fluid intake accordingly. Now, here's another common one. Sports drinks are only for elite athletes.
I've definitely felt a little self-conscious grabbing a sports drink at the gym sometimes, like I haven't quite earned it yet.
That's a misconception. While water is usually sufficient for shorter, less intense workouts, sports drinks can be beneficial for anyone engaging in prolonged or intense activity,
Okay.
especially in hot environments.
Right, they help replenish those electrolytes we lose through sweat, which is crucial for preventing muscle cramps and maintaining performance.
Exactly, and they provide a boost of energy with their carbohydrate content.
Yeah.
So don't shy away from sports drinks if you feel they benefit your performance. It's about finding what works best for you.
Myth busted. Okay, what else do we have?
Here's one that's particularly relevant to our deep dive today. Thirst is a good indicator of dehydration.
We touched on this earlier, but it's definitely worth emphasizing.
Absolutely. By the time you feel thirsty, you're already behind on your fluid needs. It's like waiting until your car's engine is overheating before checking the coolant levels.
Right.
You want to be proactive, not reactive.
So we need to make a conscious effort to drink fluids consistently throughout the day, especially during exercise.
Right.
Even if we don't feel particularly thirsty.
That's the key takeaway. Okay, how about this one? Drinking too much water is harmless.
Isn't staying hydrated always a good thing? I thought more water was always better.
While it's rare, it's actually possible to drink too much water, a condition called hyponatremia.
Okay.
It happens when electrolytes in the blood become too diluted, essentially throwing off that delicate balance we've been talking about.
So even with hydration, there's a sweet spot we need to aim for.
Always. It's about finding that balance and listening to your body's signals. Now, for one final myth, all fluids hydrate equally.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would have thought any liquid would contribute to hydration.
Not necessarily. Some beverages, particularly those high in sugar or caffeine, can actually have a dehydrating effect.
Oh, wow.
They might quench your thirst temporarily, but they can actually lead to greater fluid loss in the long run.
So those sugary sodas and energy drinks are not ideal hydration choices.
Exactly. Stick to water, milk, unsweetened tea, and sports drinks when appropriate for the best hydration results.
Well, I think we've officially debunked some major hydration myths today. What a fantastic deep dive this has been. It's amazing how many misconceptions are out there, even about something as seemingly simple as water.
I agree. It just goes to show that taking a deep dive into any topic can reveal surprising insights and dispel those long-held beliefs.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all this information with you today. I feel much more informed about the importance of hydration and how to optimize my own fluid intake for better performance.
And remember, this knowledge is power. By understanding the science of hydration and applying these practical tips, you can improve your athletic performance, prevent those frustrating muscle cramps, and stay energized and focused during your workouts.
Absolutely. And for our listeners out there, now that you know how vital hydration is for performance, how will you apply this knowledge to your own training routine? That's something to think about as you head out there and crush your next workout. Until next time, stay hydrated and keep striving for your best.